when the man who headed up the US government's Project Blue Book tells you he was asked to bury the truth, you really should be listening. The Hynek UFO Report is not simply another entry into UFO literature. It is a document of institutional proximity written by a man who was placed inside the official machinery designed to manage the UFO problem, and who ultimately emerged from that system with a very different conclusion than the one he was expected to support. Written by Dr. J. Allen Hynek, this book examines the US Air Force's UFO investigation program, most notably Project Blue Book, not from the outside looking in, but from the perspective of the scientist who was tasked with giving that program credibility. What makes this book exceptional is not just what it says about UFOs, it's what it reveals about how the subject was handled at the highest levels, and how a trained, skeptical scientist was gradually forced to confront a body of data that did not behave the way the system needed it to. Dr. J. Allen Hynek was not a fringe researcher. He was a professional astronomer with strong ties to mainstream science, brought into the Air Force's UFO investigations specifically to provide scientific authority. Beginning with Project Sign, continuing through Project Grudge, and most prominently during Project Blue Book, Hynek's role was clear: evaluate reports and, where possible, provide conventional explanations that would reassure the public. Now, in practical terms, that meant something more pointed. He was there to help reduce the problem, to explain it away, to support a narrative that UFOs did not represent a serious scientific issue. That context is critical because Hynek did not enter the subject as a believer, he entered it as a controlled skeptic, effectively a debunker by assignment. And then the data intervened. The subject of the Hynek UFO Report is twofold. On the surface, it's an examination of UFO cases and how they were processed within Project Blue Book. Beneath that, it's an analysis of institutional behaviour, how an official program managed information, categorised reports, and communicated with the public. The book details how cases were handled, how conclusions were reached, and how the Air Force balanced internal uncertainty with external reassurance. It's not a catalogue of spectacular encounters, it's a study of processes, how a phenomenon was filtered, interpreted, and in many cases, dismissed. The data presented in this book comes directly from Hynek's involvement with the official investigations. He had access to the case files, witness reports, and internal discussions. What he documents is not just the content of those cases, but the pattern that emerged over time. The key element of that pattern is what Hynek himself referred to as the residue, a subset of cases that could not be explained through conventional means. These were not isolated anomalies, they persisted. They involved credible witnesses, multiple observations, and in some instances corroborating data such as radar returns. The strength of this data lies in its origin. It's not second-hand speculation, it's drawn from the official record. The limitation lies in the fact that the system itself was not structured to pursue unknowns aggressively. Its mandate was, in part, to reduce them. The value of this book is substantial. It provides insight into how the UFO subject was managed at an institutional level during one of its most active periods. More importantly, it documents the transformation of a scientist who was initially aligned with that management strategy. Hynek's shift from skeptic to advocate for serious scientific inquiry is not presented as a dramatic conversion. It's presented as a gradual, evidence-driven process. That gives the book a level of credibility that is difficult to replicate. It's not arguing from belief, it's reporting from experience. What distinguishes the Hynek UFO Report is its authorship. Many UFO books present claims, theories, or interpretations. This book presents a perspective from inside the system that was responsible for shaping public understanding of this phenomenon. Hynek's position allowed him to see both sides, the data as it existed in the files, and the narrative as it was being presented to the public. The tension between those two is one of the book's defining elements. The central revelation of this book is not a single case or event, it is structural. Hynek makes it clear that a portion of UFO reports could not be dismissed, and the use of ridicule as a tool of public management was not consistent with scientific practice. His well-known statement, "Ridicule is not part of the scientific method," encapsulates this position. It reflects a recognition that the subject was not being engaged on purely scientific terms. The deeper implication is that the UFO phenomenon includes a persistent unknown component, and that this component was not given the level of investigation it warranted. Instead, the emphasis was often placed on maintaining public confidence. From a collector's standpoint, the Hynek UFO Report is a cornerstone title. It sits within the Project Blue Book and institutional history shelf, and its value is tied directly to Hynek's role and reputation. First edition hardbacks are the most desirable, particularly those with intact dust jackets and minimal wear. Given the book's significance, many copies have been heavily read, making clean examples more valuable. Signed copies, or those with documented provenance, can carry additional appeal. Within the UFO Book Library scoring framework, this book ranks extremely highly. It combines insider access, scientific credibility, and historical importance in a way that few titles can match. It loses only minor points due to its focus on process over detailed case analysis, which may leave some readers wanting more granular data. However, that is not its primary function. Taking this into account, the overall score stands at an impressive 9.4 out of 10. And now into the rabbit hole. This book naturally leads into Hynek's earlier work, The UFO Experience, a Scientific Inquiry, which represents an earlier stage in his transition toward advocating serious study. It also connects to broader analysis of Project Blue Book, the Robertson Panel, and the role of institutional messaging in shaping public perception. From there, readers often move into the work of Jacques Vallée, who expands the discussion onto the nature of the phenomenon itself, and into modern disclosure era material where similar themes of information management continue to surface. The Hynek UFO Report is, at its core, a record of transformation, not just of a scientist, but of a perspective. It shows what happens when a system designed to minimize a problem encounters data that cannot be easily dismissed. Now, if you've read this book, share your score out of 10 and consider whether Hynek's experience reflects a genuine investigative process constrained by institutional priorities or something more deliberate in how the subject was managed. And if you're an author, publisher, or researcher with a UFO-related book that you'd like to be featured on the channel, you're invited to send a copy using the submission details in the video description below. And finally, let us know in the comments which title you would like to see us pull from the bookshelf next. Now get the full story. Buy this book on Amazon via our easy links in the description. If you enjoyed this episode from a government insider perspective, we recommend this video. Or for a deeper dive, why not check out more books from our Government Insiders playlist? Please support the channel by simply subscribing, liking, and sharing our videos to help us so we can bring you more.